Hey, I'm Greg. I'm a software developer at a SaaS company, and I give bandwidth a 4 out of 5. So when making the jump to bandwidth, we hadn't been using a CPaaS or a cloud communications platform as a service, and our communications platform as a service, I guess. And I think it was interesting because there are a lot of offers out there. Bandwidth is, from my research, the cheapest one if you buy in bulk or offer have enough business for them. So coming from a place where we primarily relied on platforms like Remind, which is primarily used in schools and texts a lot of people en masse for free. This switch was something where we were really just looking for cutting the costs the quickest and easiest, as well as having an easy integration into our system. So we chose Bandwidth for a few reasons. One, their documentation is pretty easy to use. I think Twilio's might be marginally better, but Bandwidth's pricing is much, much better than Twilio's, especially if you come to them with a lot of business. They'll work with you, and their customer service is also pretty supportive. So for a team that was working with a lot of younger developers, it was good to have that sort of resource to tap into if we needed it. Fortunately, there's enough help online, and we weren't building a super complicated application, so we were able to avoid that. But it was something that when we were choosing our product, that was really important to us. So Bandwidth was relatively easy to integrate into our business. We used it for texting as their texting API, or their SMS API specifically. So we hadn't had one before. So integrating it was as easy as following the documentation and putting it in our own code, and then having it send out a few test messages and using it on a broader scale. Some things I think that are important to consider about that integration is that if we had been using a different provider, there may have been a few more hoops to jump through. But because we were starting from a new place, this was really easy to do, which was great. I think there are some limitations or things that we may have learned the hard way. Fortunately, we figured it out. But if you don't consider how many texts you're going to send, or if you don't put a cap on any one number, you can end up sending one person, hundreds of dollars worth of text messages on accident. And like I said, fortunately that didn't happen. But as we were onboarding, I wish that had been a little more clear. But still, it was relatively easy otherwise. So if you're considering Bandwidth, I'd encourage you to do a few things. One, there are some really good competitors out there. Twilio is great. They're really friendly to startups, I think, because they offer pricing at such low scale. You don't need to be sending 200,000 messages to be using their service. And I don't think Bandwidth is 200K, but it is. There's a higher number that you have to meet to be Bandwidth's customer in the first place. So there's that, and then there are smaller companies that I could be wrong, but my understanding is that they might just repackage some of these other services and sell them at a higher markup, but for even less of scale, right? So if you're sending a few messages a month, they might cost more like 50 cents a piece as opposed to a penny or half a penny. But if you want, really small scale without the commitment, you could do that. Another thing I consider, because we actually ended up moving away from it, is whether or not your app really needs a CPaaS or a means of using, texting and phones and other communications that don't happen over the web. I think there are so many different services like SendGrid, which is actually owned by Twilio, but they send emails for free, and I think, or for very cheap, and I think that is something that we eventually moved to. We use MailChimp actually, but we ended up axing our texting service after about 6 months. And even though Bandwidth as a product was really good, it was not necessarily fulfilling a need that wouldn't have been fulfilled better by email or another platform.